We produce millions of words every day, and almost all of them disintegrate. A daily newspaper loses its relevance within hours, and the physical paper it's printed on turns yellow and brittle shortly after. Yet Homer's Iliad was composed nearly 3 millennia ago and continues to be read and replicated. The oral tradition and early parchment it lived on are long gone, but the structure of the story survived. Isaac Newton published his Principia in 1687. The mathematical arguments inside remain completely functional for modern physicists. Why does one stack of bound paper last for thousands of years, while millions of other texts vanish completely? Standard definitions of a book, as a means of communication or a cultural monument, describe what a book does, but they don't explain the mechanics of its immortality. To understand this survival, we have to look at how we measure data. Modern science typically relies on classical information theory to quantify the value of a text. The architect of that theory, Claude Shannon, created a system to measure the quantity of data in a transmission, but he noted that his theory deliberately abstracts from the meaning of messages. Under this model, a random string of letters and a masterpiece have the same data entropy. It can tell us how many bits a book contains, but it cannot explain how those bits change the person reading them. The observer-dependent theory of everything, or ODTO, suggests that a book's value isn't found in the data itself, but in its ability to force a specific state of mind on the reader. This makes a book a coherent artifact. In this paradigm, an author doesn't just record facts, they project a section of their own world line, a sequence of their thoughts, emotions, and experiences, into a symbolic form. This projection is encoded and frozen in space-time within the physical book. The book is a piece of technology designed to preserve that specific internal state, waiting for a future observer to reactivate it. This survival mechanism can be calculated. The longevity of these artifacts follows a strict mathematical relationship between the text and its audience. This equation calculates a book's exact lifespan. T0 is the physical medium's baseline, like clay or servers. S sub A represents internal coherence, the author's focus, emotional authenticity, logic, and experience. These are multiplicative. If any trait fails, the text's coherence collapses entirely. Fyodor Dostoevsky drew directly from his years in Siberian prison camps. Because his work was backed by the literal flesh of personal experience, his texts achieved a level of internal consistency that resists devaluation. High coherence ensures the artifact is structured to survive. But even a perfectly consistent manuscript will eventually decay if it is never read. In the ODTOE framework, an unread book is essentially a dead circuit. It requires an external observer to function. The exponent of the formula is n, the cumulative number of readers who interact with the artifact. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger observed that biological organisms survive by consuming negative entropy, order, from their environment to fend off decay. A book functions similarly. It is an open system that feeds on the ordered attention of its readers, using their cognitive focus to maintain its own structural integrity across centuries. When you read, the text acts as an operator. If the book's coherence is higher than your own, it pulls your mental state toward its own pattern, forcing your thoughts to synchronize with the author's original world line. This is why group reading, like religious rituals or academic seminars, is so powerful. These collective acts of observation create a resonance that amplifies the text's effect on the audience. The survival of an artifact is a symbiotic loop. The book organizes the reader's mind, and the reader's attention sustains the book's life. Eventually, the author's biological world line stops. The creator dies. But because the book is an autonomous artifact, the author's death has no effect on the internal coherence already locked into the pages. Tragic or premature death often acts as an ignition switch for public attention. This sudden surge in observers is known as the martyrology effect. Franz Kafka died with very few readers, yet his manuscripts possessed high internal consistency. His death triggered the readership growth his work needed to survive. When the number of readers increases after an author's death, the denominator of the formula shrinks toward zero, and the book's lifespan begins to move toward infinity. The artifact is now completely severed from the mind that created it, allowing it to function as a standalone projection in the world. As a book survives for millennia, It sheds its dependence on the specific language and culture of its birth. These cuneiform impressions are tethered to their epoch because they require specific cultural keys to understand. But as the internal relations of a text become more self-consistent, they rely less on these external definitions. Eventually, the relationships between the ideas become so tight that they define themselves, much like the properties of a triangle. At this limit, the text sheds all context and condenses into a mathematical formula, a structural truth that is true regardless of who observes it. Reading is therefore the literal reactivation of an author's frozen consciousness. It bridges the gap of space-time by forcing your mind to re-actualize the same sequence of observations the author once lived through. Writing a deeply coherent book is more than an artistic effort. It binds a section of your existence securely into the world, ensuring that your world line will continue to resonate through every observer capable of reading it.